Even though we've had almost a year to discuss the issue, Chris Chan's arrest and future are still seemingly hotly debated online. Along those lines, it seemed appropriate for me to sit down and try to dispel some rumors. In other words, I wanted to make a video specifically for the folks who are already well acquainted with Chris Chan, essentially surveying Chris Chan's current situation and dispelling some common misconceptions about Chris Chan's legal situation. Along those lines, let's not beat around the bush. Let's get into it. As a preliminary matter, for the very few of you that don't already know the basics, let me provide a quick summary of what has happened over the last year or so. On August 1st, 2021, Chris Chan was arrested in Richmond, Virginia. Without going into too much disgusting detail, Chris Chan has been charged with incest with their own mother. Not much of real interest has happened since then. For example, Chris Chan has sent some increasingly stupid letters to people, and they're funny but not really worth your time. At most, the only thing worth mentioning about those letters is that Chris Chan seems to be getting more unhinged, not less. More recently, Chris Chan has been transferred to some unknown facility, which likely doesn't mean much other than Chris Chan might be getting some help from some sort of psychological services. In any event, Chris Chan's next court hearing date is July 28, 2022. Note that this is days before the 1-year anniversary of Chris Chan's arrest. Chris Chan has been charged under Virginia Code 18.2-366, which relates to incest. There's also some discussion online that Chris Chan will also be charged with financial abuse crimes, or elder abuse crimes. But to my knowledge, those charges have not been specifically addressed or charged yet. Turning back to the incest charge, that part of the Virginia Code provides, in relevant part, quote, any person who engages in sexual intercourse with his daughter or granddaughter, son or grandson, or father or mother, is guilty of a Class 5 felony. With regard to Class 5 felonies, they are a bit weird. According to Virginia Code 18.2-10, there are two types of punishment that can apply. The law provides, quote, for Class 5 felonies, a term of imprisonment of not less than 1 year nor more than 10 years, or in the discretion of the jury or the court trying the case without a jury, confinement in jail for not more than 12 months, and a fine of not more than $2,500, either or both. So let me translate all that for you. Chris Chan is charged with a Class 5 felony, which can ultimately be charged with a jail sentence of anywhere from 0 to 10 years, with a fine possible. Importantly, the charge is basically the same as a Class 1 misdemeanor if Chris Chan is given a prison term for equal to or less than a year. Note that my understanding is that the terms might be served out in different facilities. For example, a jail sentence for a felony might be carried out in a Commonwealth Correctional Facility, whereas a jail sentence for a misdemeanor might be carried out in a county or city jail. That probably won't matter much, as rumors are circulating Chris Chan is in some sort of mental health facility, which is probably the best place for Chris Chan to be. So let's get into what is likely going on here. As I indicated before, Chris Chan has been in jail for almost a year now, awaiting trial. This is not an unusual thing to happen. Courts are infamously bogged down, even in the best of times, and it's not uncommon for completely innocent defendants to spend stupidly long amounts of time awaiting trial. Of course, this is not entirely the prosecution's fault. Chris Chan's own attorney has been requesting continuances of the case. We can't read too much into these continuances, by the way. They could be because the attorney is busy, he's waiting on some particular evidence, or the like. That said, this puts the prosecution in a small bind. At the next hearing, they're arguably going to have to decide whether they want to pursue Chris Chan's charge as a felony or not. If they do want to pursue the Class 5 felony charge against Chris Chan, then they can get another continuance and not worry too much. That said, the hearing will arguably be the last time the misdemeanor option will be on the table based on Chris Chan's time served in jail, as after April 1st, 2022, Chris Chan's time served will exceed the maximum punishment for a Class 1 misdemeanor. This honestly isn't the biggest deal. It probably doesn't matter much for the prosecution. They could simply offer the misdemeanor anyway, and Chris Chan would likely jump at the offer regardless of the time served. After all, no defendant is going to complain about being hit with a misdemeanor charge rather than a felony. In any event, there is not, in my mind, really a good reason why the prosecution would be motivated to toss Chris Chan a favor and offer the misdemeanor charge anyway. It is an incest charge after all, not a speeding ticket. Given the situation I just described, I think what's going to happen is going to basically be the most obvious solution here. Let's be real, the prosecution in this case is almost certainly busy with more important things than an overgrown autistic nightmare that banged their geriatric and arguably demented mother. In other words, even though this case might be important to the internet, it really isn't all that special in the world of Virginia courts. The same could be said for Chris Chan's attorney, David Heilberg. Heilberg was appointed by the court to Chris Chan's case, meaning that Heilberg is probably on the court appointment list. In other words, Heilberg's likely got dozens of problematic low-income clients he handles on a regular basis. Chris Chan probably isn't remotely the worst client he has right now. Now, Heilberg's job is to get Chris Chan a good result, not babysit Chris Chan and listen to rambling about trolls and the dimensional merge. He's probably already planning to push Chris Chan to accept the first reasonable plea deal that comes across the table. And of course, we know Christian. All things considered, Christian almost certainly wants to leave jail and catch up on all the Sonic crap that's been coming out over the last year. In other words, all signs point to all parties involved in this process trying to get this over with. With respect to the charges, we can also safely guess that the incest charge is going to be a slam dunk, with the other charges being a little bit more up in the air. Christian has probably already spilled the beans to police regarding incest. As crazy as Christian was behaving when arrested, the police were probably able to extract a usable incest confession out of Christian fairly quickly. It's just very unlikely that the question of any trial would be whether Christian committed incest. Rather, the question is likely to be what sort of punishment Christian should be given for incest. Where things get stickier involve Christian's alleged financial crimes. If Christian admitted to those, they'll likely be lumped into any possible charges. That said, it's possible that the police and prosecution will likely not bother with any sort of esoteric financial charges that take a lot of resources to track down and prove. After all, such charges would likely involve having to prove that Christian wasn't implicitly permitted to access certain funds, which I think is not as clean of a question as we might think. Along those lines, at some point, it's almost certainly the case that some form of a plea deal will be offered and probably accepted. The prosecutor will toss over some plea deal involving incest and maybe financial or elder abuse, offering time served plus some sort of probation and/or mandatory counseling. That gets the case off everyone's plate fairly quickly, and with a result that most people could probably tolerate. But let's cover a few things that won't happen as well. First, it's almost certainly the case that Christian's mental state won't be a defense to any of the charges. Mental insanity is a very specific thing to law, and Christian simply doesn't meet those requirements, at least in my view. Christian certainly knew what they were doing, and also certainly knew what they were doing was wrong. In other words, Christian might be crazy, perhaps just not the right kind of crazy. Second, the stuff on the Quickie or on the certain Chinese gooseberry farms will almost certainly not make it to the case. The problem with the information on those sources is that it comes from largely anonymous authors and comes from unknown sources. It'd be virtually impossible to prove the authenticity of any of the information on there. Also, a lot of the information on the Quickie simply isn't important to the question of incest or financial abuse. Christian's exploits with Liquid Chris, for example, are utterly immaterial to those issues. Third, the fact that Christian was arguably tricked into admitting the incest isn't going to come into the case all that much. Even assuming this thing does go to trial, the fact that Christian is stupid or gullible really won't give a defense. And of course, Christian was not entrapped. That would only apply if the government tricked him to do it. Big picture, I feel like I should caution viewers. This whole jail saga is going to end not with a bang, but with a whimper. What's likely happening right now is that some form of Virginia mental health workers are trying to figure out what to do with Christian beyond mere prison time. The strategies those folks come up with will likely involve medicating Christian, preventing Christian from accessing the internet, and beginning to screen or otherwise limit Christian's interactions with strangers. All of those strategies are likely going to make Christian disappear off the collective internet radar somewhat. We're not going to see another Liquid saga or the like. That life is probably over. Now, this is probably the best result after all, but it's not going to be a satisfying one. At best, we can hope that it will help Christian finally improve as a person, somewhat. Thank you very much for watching this video. As always, I look forward to your comments.